his injury last November when he blew out his knee during an international tour, which I believe took place over in the UK. Because of that running power bomb. Here's the thing, when you have a guy in the main event picture for as long as what Seth Rollins was supposed to have been in it, and having to rewrite everything, how are you going to have everything revolve around and fall into place for what you have planned down the road, with Triple H versus Seth Rollins obviously being in the makes for the future of WWE? This is going to be really exciting to see when it finally happens. And obviously my prediction for this match would be Seth Rollins winning one over the game like so many people have done over the years. A victory from Seth Rollins over Triple H would not come as a surprise to me because, again, they're trying to recreate superstars for the future when you don't always have The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Kane to rely on, The Rock, Brock Lesnar. You have to create superstars who are just as big, who are ultimately going to be just as infamous as what these wrestlers have been for years in the way of Rocks and Stone Cold Steve Austin's. And even though you can't recreate Stone Cold Steve Austin out of a Roman Reigns by having him put his hands on the McMahon family or what's left of the McMahon family in the wake of everything that's happened, of course, in recent weeks with Reigns super punching Vince McMahon, almost putting his hands on Stephanie, coming very close, which I wouldn't be surprised he does before WrestleMania. He'll probably get a power bomb in on Stephanie before WrestleMania to heighten the tension between himself and Triple H. There's a lot of ways this one can go, but no matter how many times you try to recreate a superstar like Stone Cold Steve Austin out of someone like Roman Reigns or someone like a Shawn Michaels out of Seth Rollins, who he really puts me in mind of very outstandingly with how Seth Rollins goes about wrestling in the ring, no matter how many times you try to recreate these legends, you're never going to be able to do it full swing or full throttle, and WWE creative have to realize that, so they have to distribute these superstars in the future their own way, get away from the originality of having another Stone Cold Steve Austin or a Rock, or having Roman Reigns, say, resemble The Rock in a lot of ways, which he does, because of course they're family, they're cousins, we know that, and we know The Rock is going to WrestleMania with a tweet sent out. Leave the responsibility of being The Rock up to Dwayne Johnson. Don't try to recreate someone like Roman Reigns into a Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin, because that completely defeats their purpose and takes the interest of a wrestling fan away from them. If you want to put them in the ring against Triple H, you can do that. Put Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins in the ring against Triple H more than once. Put them in the ring against Triple H all the time, as long as it serves the purpose of creating a superstar in their own way, and it separates what's going on now from original ways of creating superstars into the next Stone Cold Steve Austins or Rocks, which I really hate. Steve Williams and Dwayne Johnson are their own original characters. They wrote their own original material. They were obviously influenced a lot by the promoter Vince McMahon, but I mean, you don't need to recreate superstars like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels or the superstars like Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins all the time. Am I right or am I wrong? Triple H versus Seth Rollins, great psychology, just as The Undertaker versus Sting will be great psychology, but I don't see that anywhere at this point in time on the WrestleMania card. What we're looking at now, Triple H versus Seth Rollins, or Triple H versus Roman Reigns, and we're looking at Braun Strowman and Brock Lesnar. Almost lost myself there for a while. So WrestleMania this year, Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman and Triple H and Roman Reigns, which is not the most impressive WrestleMania card that I've seen in years. This is probably the worst looking WrestleMania card since WrestleMania 22. And I say that because of all the last minute stipulations thrown in the WrestleMania 22 card at the last minute, and that's probably what we're going to see just before WrestleMania this year, because again, you know, the DL factoring in there is something that's really outstanding because of all the big names we have on the DL. Don't be surprised if last minute stipulations are the key that puts over WrestleMania this year, with last minute stipulations being thrown in about a week or two before WrestleMania. Matches all of a sudden with no explanation become street fights, Hell in the Cell matches, cage matches, no holds barred matches, submission matches. We have seen stranger things happen ever since WrestleMania 22's disaster of a WrestleMania card. It's not as bad as WrestleMania 22. It's not near as bad as WrestleMania 22. It's not the worst WrestleMania card I have seen, because WrestleMania 27, just 4 or 5 years ago, if you throw yourself back to The Miz versus John Cena with The Rock as the guest host, that was probably the worst WrestleMania, and if not for Triple H versus The Undertaker that year, that WrestleMania would have went down in history as probably the worst remembered WrestleMania in the way of a card since WrestleMania 22. It's definitely one of the worst since WrestleMania 22, but it's not as bad. When you look at Triple H versus Roman Reigns, which has been building for a very long time, and Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman, which would have to be for something very important or significant, even if it was to be for the career of Brock Lesnar. They've got to do something to really shake up the complexity of WrestleMania 32 this year and to get people talking, because you don't want people talking negatively about what's supposed to be your biggest event of the year. You don't want people saying that WrestleMania 32, well, didn't live up to the hype. Some things I liked about it, some things I didn't like about it. You want everybody thinking that WrestleMania 32 was fucking awesome. You don't want people coming away from it very frustrated. And if Seth Rollins were not injured around this time, we probably would be seeing Triple H versus Seth Rollins instead of Triple H versus Roman Reigns, which was probably what was originally planned, because it didn't seem like Roman Reigns being champion was ever in the minds of WWE creative, or at least not this soon. And obviously what it all fell back on was all the injuries that we saw. When they knew that John Cena wasn't going to WrestleMania because of a diagnosis and a prognosis from a professional doctor, they said, oh fuck, what are we going to do? Cena's out. We got to put somebody in. Also, Sin Cara's out. Randy Orton is out, not coming back anytime soon. Braun Strowman probably is the guy to answer that, and Roman Reigns is the guy to answer that, to answer the question of who are we going to put in when all these wrestlers are out. It's not my choice of WrestleMania main events, to be honest with you, because I've seen far better. I'd rather see Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels any day at a WrestleMania, or Yokozuna versus Bret Hart any day, or Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior 100 times over. Even these guys are like 100 years old. I would rather see that than seeing Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman, because really, how is that going to get over? And is that really a name that a name like Brock Lesnar, who crossed over from wrestling into MMA, became UFC champion and dominated for his reign, is that really the guy that you want to see Brock Lesnar facing this year at WrestleMania, or would you rather see Brock Lesnar in a championship match, which still could go the way of favoring Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman, which obviously is how it's been for a number of years, with Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman always having their way, with Paul Heyman having significant influence on the writing for WWE and Brock Lesnar's career and creative direction. But, you know, for all the Brock Lesnar fans out there, I really feel for you guys right now, because you have a lot of questions more than you have answers right now as to everything that's happened in the fallout of all these injuries and everything else that's been derived in WWE. But the Authority being gone, I am really happy the Authority is gone, and it doesn't seem like anytime soon they are coming back. And my prediction for the future, at least for the next 3 to 4 months, which is a quarter of 2016, over 25% of it, these storylines are going to revolve around the Authority. Triple H versus Seth Rollins, Triple H versus Roman Reigns, probably more than one match. Not just a WrestleMania match, probably a reunion of the Shield, of course, falling back on everything the Authority has done. And are you somebody who can concur with me and kind of agree with the Authority being gone and other things coming in to WWE? There for a while it seemed like the League of Nations were the new Authority in WWE. Everything happening with Sheamus, Rusev, King Barrett. It seemed like everything was revolving around them and their allegiance with Triple H and Stephanie. Yes, Triple H and Stephanie have always been referred to as the Authority in WWE, but keep in mind, even though they're the Authority on television, the thing is, Vince McMahon is believed to still be the man who is in charge, calling all the shots backstage, and what he says goes, which was something I couldn't have been more proud to have read earlier this last year. I thought that was great, because Vince McMahon at least had some kind of creative sense. With WWE, he's had it for years, and obviously he's not 100% confident in having Triple H and Stephanie calling all the shots as principal owners and COOs of WWE, because he believes that he has a way of running the company, and he's still mentoring them and preparing them for the inevitable future when Vince does not run the WWE and eventually steps down. What kind of future we'll have in store because of the Authority for WWE and all of its employees, and its future just in general in the way of a product, I have no idea, and I shudder to think where we're going from here. But as long as Vince McMahon is driving the proverbial ship, the captain of the ship, of course, for WWE, at least we have a more promising future, at least at this point. But again, you know, it's really sad when you have someone over 70 years old running WWE from the get-go after purchasing it from his father back when it was the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and changing it into a global promotion, into just the WWF, which it was known for years, and eventually World Wrestling Entertainment. When you have somebody over 70 years old still running it the way he was years ago, then you have to question, you know, is this really what's best for business in the minds of Triple H and Stephanie? Are they trying to convince us to like something that we really don't want to get into? The Authority, the best faction since the Four Horsemen, DX, the New World Order. I shudder to differ on that, because I think that that's just ludicrous. Saying that people like J&J Security, Joey Mercury, and Jamie Noble, who are still so 2005 in my opinion, how are they even relevant in 2016. Corporate Kane wasn't so bad. At least it gave Kane something to do every time an injury would come up. But we've seen this before with the corporation back in the Attitude Era. It was almost like they were trying to reiterate and rehatch an idea for Kane back in the Attitude Era, which really didn't go anywhere for Kane, and very quickly he went back to wearing the mask. We've seen Kane take the mask off, put the mask back on, a lot over the years, and even in the early thousands they tried that, and it was debated whether or not they were going to go ahead with Kane taking the mask off full time, which he did. But ultimately, the Masked Kane character, whatever variation or metamorphosis you're talking about, was what got Glenn Jacobs over. It wasn't Isaac Yankem, it wasn't the fake Diesel, it was this Kane character. And if not for Kane's character, whatever metamorphosis you're talking about, especially the masked characters, Kane probably would have never amounted to anything in WWE or faced as many legendary names as he had the chance to. Competing for championships, facing The Undertaker as many times as he did at WrestleMania, it would have never, ever happened. So I think the Authority being gone are probably what's better for the WWE, and it's definitely going to benefit them in the long run. I'll put up with Triple H and Stephanie for a little bit longer. I definitely appreciate what they did with Sting for this year, inducting him into the Hall of Fame after me raising the issue time and time again of how Sting had been treated unfairly. It was unjustifiable, a miscarriage of justice. In the words of the late great Gorilla Monsoon, of how they were treating Sting, you had a guy on every major level for every major wrestling promotion, World Championship Wrestling, total non-stop action, even the independent level. He comes to the big time in WWE. Stephanie McMahon and Triple H welcome him to the big time, only to lose. Can't say I blame him for coming this close to tearing up his wrestling contract, his Legends contract, in front of Vince McMahon just minutes before WrestleMania, saying he was nervous. Obviously he was, because he knew he was going out and losing in front of millions of people on TV and losing in front of thousands, over 75 to 80,000 fans at WrestleMania 31. So obviously that was to be expected. But I am really proud and happy of the direction of WWE at this point, and I look forward to finding out what's going to be happening from here as I bid farewell to a faction that really had no business ever being involved in WWE and doing what they did. I'm your host, Jonathan Clarke, and I will see you again next week. Like what you hear? Tell us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube.